respected viewers. I'm George from Ireland, so welcome back to my channel for this live broadcast. So I want to comment about this contretemps between K Rowling and Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. So the Russian head of state cited her as part of a tirade about cancel culture. Now, it's one of the few occasions in which I agree with Putin that cancel culture is a bad thing. But the trouble is, he's the main canceller of culture in his country and would like to just cancel Ukrainian culture altogether, even though Russia copies some of it. You know, the hopak, that Ukrainian dance, a very energetic one, folding your arms, going down and kicking your legs up like this. Wow. And the Russians do that, but actually borrowing it from Ukraine, or even those Ukrainian shirts from the Ukrainian dresses that ladies wear. And of course, Ukraine being the birthplace of Russia, Kievan Rus. Um, but anyway, so this is part of Putin's shame that there's this decadent, crazy West is trying to deracinate Russians and so on. But you look how cultured he is. I remember that the Russian state media, every time there was a gay athlete in the Tokyo Olympics, they'd say, well, this person is against Russian traditional moral values. The traditional moral values have had a wonderful exposition, these Russian traditional moral values, in all those civilian bomb shelters that Putin's been blowing up, in the maternity hospital that his forces were blowing up. So that's not the kind of civilization I want. Now, I want to be fair to my Russian friends. I'm not suggesting that most Russians are in favour of that sort of thing and actually don't know about it, because the Russian media would never report it. If they ever hear about it, say, oh, lies, 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 filthy lies. They're introducing us. There's this Russophobic hysteria. And there are obviously some decent people who believe that, you know, who suspend their rationality. People can switch off their critical faculties, especially when they're deeply emotionally invested in believing something. And obviously, nationalism has an incredibly potent purchase on a person's heart and mind. Anyway, so Putin said that Russian composers and writers and so on are being cancelled in the West, even though not legally cancelled. Is that true? I mean, do you know of any TV station, radio station, or whatever, symphony orchestra or philharmonic orchestra, whatever, that's refused to play music by a Russian composer, or people who refuse to print Russian novels? I mean, is it in translation or in the original language? I mean, I haven't heard of any. So the Western world is broad. Is that 30 countries or 50 countries? I don't know of a single instance of it. There might be a few examples, but it's really not happening on a large scale. So yeah, they're banning Russian writers and books, he said, which would obviously be a terrible thing. But this is a bit rich coming from him, who's a stalwart defender of Stalinism, and even in the 1980s, Bach was outlawed in the Soviet Union, something as harmless as that 18th century composer. All sorts of things ban forbidden literature for being so extremist, in as much as they tell the truth, or almost any modern literature, English literature, even in translation, often forbidden. There were some favoured writers, especially those who reflected negatively on the Western world, showed the seamier side of it, or showed there be terrible penury and things like that. So it really is preposterous, and K Rowling has hit back, has broadly defended Western culture, and of course we should welcome constructive criticism, and I don't think Western culture is inherently superior. The West is a very broad, comprehensible entity, but it's questionable where it is. Is Poland a Western country? I think now we'd say it definitely is. In the 1980s, maybe not. I've heard South Africans tell me their country is a Western country. Questionable. Maybe it is. I mean, obviously Canada and the USA are. How about Mexico? Maybe, kind of. So the dividing line is fuzzy, to say the least. So it's true that there was a conductor, Valery Gregiev, who was going to conduct something in Wales, and he was asked would he denounce the invasion of Ukraine, and he declined to do so, so he was dropped. Now, was that hard on him? Because put yourself in his position, if he speaks out against the so-called special military operation, he would face a cancellation at home. If he goes home, he may even be jailed. So perhaps that was asking him to stick his neck out a bit too far. And you see how Putin has really trashed the culture of his own country. I mean, was he writing out of the script the fact that Pyotr Tchaikovsky, surely the most celebrated Russian composer of all time, was homosexual? I mean, if being gay is so unacceptable, don't play his music. And what was played at Putin's inauguration? Oh yeah, it was the Coronation March by Tchaikovsky. And another thing is, so he really wants to be the new czar. So it's just a rant from him, changing the subject from his military failings and so on. Now, K Rowling has been a victim of cancel culture herself, saying there need to be some all-women spaces and saying that it's trans women are not actually women. And I mean, I'm with her on that one. There are some incontrovertible biological facts. If someone goes as far as to have gender reassignment, I suppose then I might accept that someone has become a woman or indeed changed in the other direction. But a person can't be female just by saying I'm female, or a male can't, a female can't become a male simply by saying that. There can be a difference between appearance and reality, or between identity and reality. So how people identify is sometimes erroneous, and we know we don't have to accept these fallacies. It's a sort of an emperor's new clothes situation, and you can see where this is going. If some male wants to be in the female changing room to ogle them, he could just say, I'm a woman, even when that's blatantly untrue. And under this modern imbecility and inanity, we'd have to accept that. Seemingly intelligent people will go along with the most ludicrous beliefs. Well, you see that in Russia sometimes too. Of course, you'll be howled down as a cruel bigot if you don't accept that. So it begs the question of what actually the characteristic of male and female is. And this applies to sport as well. There was something competing, I think, for New Zealand. I mean, a man who pretended to be a woman extremely unconvincingly and was allowed in. But, this would be the end of women's sport, because why do we have separate categories of male and female? Because males, on average, are considerably bigger, have more muscle mass, even a slightly different bone structure, and these are most considerable advantages. Which is why women would be defeated in virtually every sport. So that's why we do have separate categories from them. So that's how just preposterous it is. And in order we want more women in Parliament and the judiciary, all right, let's just call the men to call themselves women then. Lauren Southern, she's this Canadian YouTuber, activist, and she is blatantly female, very cisgender, and she had herself registered in Canada as a man, just to demonstrate the absurdity of this situation, how simple it is, even though she said, well, that's a flagrant lie, but that's the law now. So Putin, I mean, he's not wrong about everything. I know he's a very evil man, but even the devil can speak true sometimes. And a lot of things in Russia are banned, so-called extremist books and so on. And I wonder will there be more sort of cultural isolationism, saying we can't have this decadent Western literature or music, like a lot of rock and roll music was banned in Russia in the 1980s, when and the other Soviet states. Okay, so thanks for watching so much, and please subscribe to my channel, and donate to me on PayPal, georgecallahan79@gmail.com. Toodle pip.